So, what's the right thing to do when you've kept the peace with someone your whole life, but now you don't want them at your wedding? That's the dilemma in this week's Hello Hayes advice column. Let's hear it now. Hello Hayes. I recently got engaged, and while I'm so excited, there's one big problem. I don't want to invite my dad's wife to my wedding. It's complicated, and I'm feeling sad that such a happy event has brought up such complex feelings. My parents got divorced when I was 5 years old. It was messy and included an affair on my dad's side, although this is never something he's acknowledged nor something I've asked him about. My dad continued to date the woman he left my mom for, and they've been together 19 years. I learned about my dad's affair as a teenager and worked through anger at the time, but I've genuinely forgiven him, and he's one of the most important people in my life. Growing up, we saw my dad's partner for extended time periods over holidays and on occasional weekends. It has never been a comfortable relationship. Even as young children, she was competitive with me and my sister and would be overly PDA with my dad in a way that clearly made us, and often I think him, very uncomfortable. As we got older, we stopped seeing her except at an annual family Christmas party. She became part of my dad's life that was very separate from us. Being so close with my dad, I always found it confusing that he has a relationship with someone who I find to be so emotionally immature and who clearly dislikes me and my sister. When I see her as an adult now, I'm always chatty and polite, but she continues to be passive-aggressive and rude. My partner was shocked after the first couple of times he met her, both by her behavior and the fact that it goes unacknowledged by me, a person who is usually very vocal at standing up for myself or for my dad. I haven't brought it up because I never see her, and I don't want to hurt my dad's feelings. I would find it so difficult to even acknowledge to him that I know about the affair, that I do blame him for leaving my mom in the way he did, especially when my sister and I were so young. This dynamic gets even more complicated because they randomly got married last year, and I did a reading at their ceremony. My sister refused to attend and blamed it on her poor mental health, which I do not judge her for at all. But it made me feel like I needed to go the extra mile to support him. The whole thing made me feel confused and uncomfortable, and I do slightly regret not discussing this with my dad. At the time, I felt like I could shelve these emotions as I'm genuinely happy that he's happy. Their relationship doesn't have any negative impact on my life anymore, other than making me feel confused. However, I do not want to invite his wife to my wedding. I want to be surrounded by people that love and support me and my partner. I want my sister and my mom to feel comfortable and at ease, and I think his wife would go out of her way to make them deliberately uncomfortable. The onus is always on me in these situations to smooth tensions and keep the peace, neither of which I want on my wedding day. I don't mind offending her, but I feel deeply sad and anxious about upsetting my dad. Ultimately, feeling uncomfortable on the wedding day might be worth avoiding hurting my dad by admitting all of this, admitting how strongly I dislike his partner and how let down I feel that he never asked how his relationship affected us. I don't think my dad did a good job including us in his relationship, and I wish he handled things differently, but I do feel like I have forgiven him for this internally, and I don't think it would be super helpful for either of us to dredge up all this baggage. Please help, Hayes. How should I navigate this? Am I being selfish? I want to cause as little hurt as possible without compromising my own happiness during my wedding. Yours, an anxious daughter. Felt like my voice. Oh, I felt like my voice was choking up a little bit there. So, first thing I want to say to you is that, look, I can only come to this conversation as somebody whose wedding also brought up a lot of complicated things from my family that I felt I was at peace with. And I think, I can only come to this conversation from that perspective. And what that perspective has shown me is that it's impossible to experience a milestone without having to face certain pain. And I think that that's true of anyone who has experienced any loss in their life or is a fellow child of divorce or just, I don't know. I don't want to even limit it to those specific experiences. But if you have dealt with grief as a child, I think the reality is that milestones will bring them up. Even if you are at peace with something, the milestone will hold up a mirror to what is true. And even if you're at peace with what is true, it will still make you kind of re-reckon with what you don't have or what you missed or what you thought you'd forgiven, but maybe it's a little bit more complicated. Maybe you've accepted something, but you're not truly at peace with it in the way you thought you were. And maybe, there have been things that I thought I was at peace with, or maybe I was at peace with, that I actually just buried, and certain milestones come up or certain external things come up in life, and I realize, hey, maybe I was at peace, but I'm actually not at peace with this right now. There's still more for me to process, and there's still more peace for me to find. And I'm sorry that you are experiencing that now with your wedding. I think it makes sense to me that you are sad that such a happy time is in some ways right now being overshadowed by the complex feelings you feel, the disappointment, the grief, the anger, the resentment, whatever it is. All of the feelings are valid. If you look at that big, color wheel of emotions, it is normal. It is normal and it's expected. And I am sorry that you have to tolerate it. Or sorry, sometimes saying I'm sorry doesn't even fucking cut it, right? It's annoying when people say I'm sorry. But what I want you to know is you're not alone. This feeling is normal. I sit with it. I've sat with it. I've sat with it myself, and I sit in it with you now. There is hope, though. I don't think that your wedding day, I don't think that it will be overshadowed by all of these feelings, especially because you want to get to the bottom of it. Or I don't even know if there is a bottom to be found, but you want to get into it. You want to dig into this. And I don't think you're being selfish by not wanting to invite your dad's wife. She sounds like a piece of work. I know the type. She sounds like a piece of work, and it makes complete sense to me why you don't want her there. But I actually don't think, your wedding is bringing all of this up right now because it's the first time in a while that you've had to face the reality. It's the first time in a while that you've had to actually make a choice about this. You've had to confront the situation. You've been able to get by pretending that you don't know what you know. You've been able to get by building a relationship with your dad and ignoring this truth bomb that you've been holding. But now with the wedding, you got to face it. And I think because the wedding has triggered this, you're very focused on finding a solution to the wedding, a solution to what am I going to do about stepmom. But I encourage you actually to kind of remove your wedding from the conversation right now. Because it's not really about your wedding. It's not really about should you invite her or not? Should I hurt my dad's feelings by not inviting her or not? This is about, should I tell my dad what I know? Should I have a conversation with my dad? Our first honest conversation about what happened between him and my mom. Do I want to open that door? And it's really scary. It's really scary. And I also want to pause and say how wonderful I think it is that you have such a special relationship with your dad. I know how precious that must be to you, and for good reason. That really speaks to both of your parents that you've been able to have such strong individual relationships with both of them. But I think it's time that you bring this up with your dad. You've been holding on to a secret. You've been holding on to a secret for a really long time. And, part of forgiving our parents, which everybody has to do, right? Of course, there's a scale of how royally parents can fuck up, but all parents need to be forgiven for something. I imagine it's just part of being a parent. It is something that you have to accept if you're going to go on that journey. Though, maybe some parents are not so willing to do that, and maybe those people shouldn't actually be parents, but that's another story. Part of forgiving a parent for the pain they cause you, I think, is creating the opportunity for you to sit in the truth together. It's hard to truly forgive and to truly be at peace when there is not a shared acknowledgement of what really happened. Your dad knows what happened. He knows his truth. You know your truth as a child, as the 5-year-old whose parents got divorced, which, 5 is so young. That's the age my brother was when my parents got divorced, and I was older. I was 12, 13, which also so young. But 5 is so young, and you hold on to your truth of that moment in your life and growing up in this dynamic. You hold the truth that your mom shared with you, which is her truth. And you and your dad have built a relationship around all of that, but circling this kind of void in the center, which is your shared truth. I don't know, that was a whole lot of jangled words, but I think that something really special could happen in your relationship should you give him the chance to be honest with you and to tell him what you know. Now, of course, your dad's had, listen, I can already hear people, don't make excuses for men. He's had so many chances to come clean and tell you, and all of that might be true, but he's your dad, you know? And when we're talking about real people in our lives who we love, and these are complicated fucking things, you know, affairs don't happen out of nowhere. There are, and I don't say that to blame mom. I just say that it's complicated. And it is a parent's responsibility to make amends with their child. It is a parent's responsibility to deal with the repercussions of his mistake. And I don't know. I don't know if kids should always be looped into the absolute truth. Should you have been told that your dad had an affair, that your dad cheated on your mom when you were a teenager? I don't know. I know how challenging it was at times to know certain things about my parents when I was young, and that can create some really confusing feelings in a kid. Anyway, your dad hasn't brought it up to you. I think it's time you tell him that you know. Because this problem is never going to go away. This feeling you have inside that there's something you haven't addressed. You said it at the end of the letter. You're scared to admit him how strongly you dislike her. But really, I think you hit the nail on the head with this last part. You're scared to admit how let down you feel that he never asked how his relationship affected us. This is about you and your dad, my love. This is not about you and her. It's about you wanting to get closer with him, which I think is a beautiful thing. But how can you get closer when there's this lie or there's this unspoken truth? I think you have to bring that truth out into the light. I think you must. And I know that that's scary, but he might already know. Like, you might be doing your dad a big favor. You're showing the strength that maybe he wishes he had. It's not your responsibility to bring this up. There's all these complicated things, isn't there, with parent and kid dynamics, because it's not your responsibility to be the one to bring this up with your dad. But sometimes responsibility is a moot fucking point. If your dad's not going to bring it up, it would be delusional to be like waiting that he's one day going to bring this up with you. If you have the tools and you feel like it's time, I say that you take that first step, mostly for you. Because as I was starting to say before, and then I got off track, this is not, the wedding is maybe the first time in your adult life that this is being dredged up. As you say, you want to dredge up all the baggage. The baggage is being dredged up by the mere fact that you are getting married. I don't know if you want kids, but there are other milestones down the line. Kids, any types of achievement, there's other stuff down the line where this is going to keep coming up unless you can find some closure with this. And I think closure is not you like magically liking your stepmom. Closure is not your stepmom changing who she is. I think closure is found in this honest conversation with your dad, that you know what happened and it makes you sad. Give him the chance to respond to you. Give him the chance not to explain himself, but to say he's sorry. And maybe you're scared. Maybe you're scared that he's not going to be able to apologize. And I think that that's part of why we avoid things sometimes. It's like, what's the point? Maybe you're scared that if you bring it up, I keep going in and out of focus. Oy, 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 oy. Maybe you're scared that if you bring it up, there we go. I'm sure you're scared about what bringing this up will do to your relationship. And I think the complicated thing about, any relationship really where you've had to forgive something or you've had to look past things, you've had to accept things about somebody else, which is every relationship, right? Is that sometimes one strategy will work for a really long time. And I think the strategy that you've been employing in your relationship with your dad, which is avoid this topic of the affair, pretend we both don't know, or just keep it, it's just something we don't talk about, that has worked for you so far. It has worked for you so far. When I started seeing my therapist back in January and the topic of my parents' divorce came up, the first thing I said was like, that's not a big deal though. It was a good thing. It isn't something that affects me anymore. I think that line, it's not something that affects me anymore, literally came out of my mouth. And over time, over the last couple of years, I've realized that it does. It has still affected me, actually. And many of the strategies that I had used in my teens and 20s to come to terms and be able to function, given some of the stuff that just some of the stuff that I was sad about, those tools worked for me for a long time, and then they stopped working for me. That makes sense. The journey to becoming truly at peace with something, to really facing our pain and disappointment and grief, it's a journey for a fucking reason. And sometimes things that worked before are no longer going to work anymore. And I think in my experience, when I've needed to find new coping mechanisms, or when I've realized that some of my coping mechanisms didn't actually work all that well, these realizations have often been triggered by some external event or a milestone or something happening where I realize, oh, I feel really unsettled right now. I feel really destabilized. Something doesn't feel quite right. And I don't know what to do. And the reaction you're having, the way that you are running through all of the different scenarios, you're wanting to protect everybody, you're feeling overwhelmed and anxious, like it's completely normal given the circumstance. And I think it's a sign that what worked for you in the past isn't going to work anymore. You are looking for the next level of truth and intimacy in your relationship with your dad, and I think it's time that you find it. So I don't know how you approach that conversation. I don't know you and your dad, but it sounds like you have the type of bond, and he is the type of person who's at least available for the conversation to begin. And you're probably going to feel nervous. You're probably going to feel nervous bringing this up. Dredging up stuff from the past, a lot of family members will have resistance to that. And he might have resistance to it at first. Like, why would you bring this up? That was so long ago. It's not even relevant anymore. You've said it doesn't feel relevant. But it is relevant. It's relevant to you now. And I think the conversation could just begin with like, Dad, I really don't want to bring this up. I really don't want to bring this up, and I hate that I have to bring this up, and I've been dreading it, and I've been avoiding it, and say whatever feels true to you. But getting married and having this milestone has made me feel really sad about what happened with you and Mom. And you and I have never talked about it, but I know about the affair with whatever your stepmom's name is. And I feel like it's time we talk about it. Maybe something like that. There's no perfect way to address this. There's no perfect way to say this. And we're not looking for the perfect words. We're looking for kind of like the right vibe. You want to bring the right vibe to the conversation, the right openness, the right honesty. However it is you show up will be like whatever emotions you bring with you to that conversation will be right. I do trust that. I trust that you, reading your letter, I have no doubt that you are ready for this, that you are coming to this with everybody's best interest in mind. You are a sensitive, kind daughter and sister and friend and going to be wife. I have no doubts about your intentions here. I really want you to put yourself first. And I think putting yourself first right now means having this conversation and then deciding what you want to do about the wife. You don't need to invite her. Like, I want you to feel comforted by the fact that I don't think you could do anything. Any choice you make about whether she should come or not is going to be the right choice. But I don't think you'll feel good about this choice until you have an honest conversation with your dad. This conversation is here to benefit you. It's here to give you closure. It's here to give you peace. It's here to help you feel confident with your decision. Because you're right, on your wedding, it is about, you do want to protect yourself. And that's a real difference. There's a real difference in what I'm saying to you and what I would say to like another bride who isn't considering anybody else and is so self-centered and so narcissistic and has really forgotten that a wedding is about the love that the relationship that you share with the person you're marrying. And, I wouldn't say this to somebody who's lost the plot. But for somebody like you, it is really important that you take steps, I think, to protect yourself. Because this will be, in some ways, like a fragile, do I want to say that it's a fragile day? I think there's no way around it that milestones are hard when you have some family complication. However you want to define that, if you listening, you'll either know what I'm talking about if you're listening, or you won't. And if you know what I'm talking about, you understand what I'm saying. There's no way around that. And I do think it's important to make choices that are going to be best for you on the overwhelm of that day, because it's going to be an overwhelming day. Even if you have a picture perfect life and everybody gets along and there's nothing weird going on, the wedding's overwhelming. And I think it's smart to take steps to make sure that you're going to feel the most like stable and joyful and at peace that you possibly can. And that might mean inviting the stepmom. Like, it might mean that. That reminds me a little bit of something else you said about like avoiding things for the sake of keeping the peace. Sometimes we have to do that in families. Like, I know some people might not like that. And I don't think that means you're being a people pleaser necessarily. It doesn't mean that you're letting people walk all over you. You're not being an enabler. Sometimes in relationships, we do have to let things go. We can't constantly be dredging up the past. We have to get to a place of acceptance for what the reality is. And I think you've done a beautiful job of that in your life. But right now, it's not serving you anymore. And that's when we practice that flexibility. You've been able to build a great relationship with your dad with what you've been doing, but now it's limiting. That's run its test, whatever you want to call it. It's time to try something else. And you might, after you have this conversation, decide, okay, I feel better now. Dad and I are on the same page. I'm going to invite her, but I'm going to create some other boundaries that feel good for me. Maybe she doesn't sit up in the front. Maybe, I don't even know if that's a good idea. I'm just throwing things out. Maybe I think that once this fog of this like hidden truth is lifted, I think that you will have much more clarity about what it is that you want to do. I'm just reading your letter now. I'm reading it a little bit more now. I can so relate to that kind of disparity sometimes between being a person who like stands on business and is always gonna speak up for themselves and always speak up for themselves and defend other people. But then there's like one area that you just kind of let things go. And I don't think you're wrong for in the past letting things go with the stepwife. Like, that has been a vast protective mechanism for you. I understand. And I think your partner commenting on it is a sign for his love for you, and maybe wanting to highlight that something's wrong, that he doesn't approve. But I also just want you to know that I understand why you do that. And I think it can be hard sometimes for people who haven't been in that position to get it. But sometimes we do just have to like put a smile on our face and try to get through the experience. And sometimes the best way to do that is by fucking looking the other way and ignoring it. But I get that you can no longer ignore it, because it is now starting to trickle back in. It's getting in the way. And I do want to talk to you also a little bit about wanting to protect your dad's feelings and your mom and sister's feelings. But I think protecting your dad is really a big one here. And at the end of the day, you can't protect your dad from his feelings. Your dad is going to have feelings about this. This might make him feel sadness, regret, disappointment. And those are feelings that he has to process and he has to live with and he has to make amends for. And I know that it brings you great pain to think about your dad having to experience that and live with it. But it's not your responsibility to manage his feelings. Okay? That doesn't mean that you shouldn't approach him with empathy and kindness, and that you shouldn't bring a softness to the conversation and the level of understanding that you have. But it does mean that you don't need to make choices to try to protect him. Ultimately, your dad's feelings are not your responsibility. And it's such a hard thing to accept. And I don't even know what true acceptance looks like and feels like on that front. I think that's going to be a process too, because who knows how he's going to react to you wanting to talk about this. He might react in ways that surprise and delight and comfort you, and he might react in ways that disappoint you, or that force you to keep your relationship on surface level. Not that your relationship is surface level now, but certainly your relationship is evolving, whether he's aware of it or not, because you are going through this internal process yourself. And whether he's able to step with you into the next part is now entirely up to him once you bring the truth to the table. I really hope that he greets you with compassion and honesty and remorse and an apology, you know? I don't know what his apology should be for. I think that is private and true to your relationship, but I hope that he gives you a sorry or an acknowledgement in a way that feels like gives you some real peace, that you have received a sorry for what really you are owed a sorry for. That is what I think needs to happen here. And you might never have a perfect fucking solution to the stepwife. I don't know if your dad will say, "You're right, daughter, she's a bitch and she has been terrible to you and your sister and I'm fucking sorry and I'm gonna dump her ass." Like, he might not say that. And you might continue with a very surface level relationship with her that you complain with your sister about. And maybe it does continue to drive a wall in your relationship, and that's a pain that you're going to live with. But I know it's a pain you're going to live with, and it's a pain you're going to hold, and it's a grief you will hold. But I do think it will feel less intense. These milestones may continue to feel hard, but they won't feel like dishonest. It won't feel like you have something to hide. And I think that you deserve at least that. You deserve at least that. I'm really excited for you that you got married, by the way, that you got engaged, by the way. I think I forgot to say that. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be beautiful and it's going to be hard. And that's what life is, right? Like, weddings are a moment of life, and they're going to reflect the realities of life too. And I think that the complexity and the depth that you bring to planning your wedding, thinking about your wedding and your eventual wedding day, they'll be reflected in the rest of your life too. And in what I think are not sad ways, but beautiful and honest ways. And, the family you build is with your husband. You guys are lucky to have each other. And I think your dad's lucky to have you too. So I love you and I'm grateful for this question. And was there anything else that don't beat yourself up for speaking at their wedding, by the way. That's the final thing. I do see how it makes it more complicated for you, that you may feel like you're being dishonest. Like how could you speak at because you're a good daughter and you love your dad. And it's as simple as that. You're a good daughter, you love your dad, and sometimes we do things that we don't want to for the people we love, and we're allowed to have our feelings change about those choices later on. Just because you did it then and you felt like it was the right thing to do then doesn't mean that you need to think it was the right thing to do forever. And it still might have been the right thing to do, by the way. I don't know. You get to decide that, and you may feel a million different ways about that, but it's a distraction from the real thing, which is that you and your dad need to have this honest conversation. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for writing in. And that's a wrap on our advice column portion of today's episode. And in this next part, I want to ask you guys a question that I've been thinking about lately. And that is, what is one thing in your life that you used to really want? Like, you thought this thing was going to be what makes you happy. You felt it was true to your identity, something you really want that you no longer want. What's one thing that you used to really want that you no longer are interested in having or getting? I've been thinking about it because sometimes there's such an intensity to my want for things. I want something so bad that it feels like all consuming. I sort of lose sight of other things maybe in my life, or the stakes feel really high, whether I get it or not, whether I achieve it or not, whether this thing happens. The stakes feel so high. And I have found it helpful recently to reflect back on other things I wanted that I grew out of the want. For example, when I was working in maybe this was 2 full-time jobs ago, I was working at a company, Thrive Global. At the time, the company was like a media tech hybrid. and I was on the media side writing blogs. The company's mission was to end the stress and burnout epidemic. So we often I was like writing blogs about new science research that came out about sleep and how sleep can help us prevent burnout. I was also doing a lot of like celebrity write-ups. Like, God, it's so fucking stupid now to think about. But if Katy Perry came out and said that she gets 8 hours of sleep a night, or if she did a podcast interview, I would like write up the conversation. And at the time, that work felt meaningful for me because it was getting me closer to my dream of being a writer. But it also felt kind of pointless. It felt kind of pointless because I didn't feel connected to the actual work. I wasn't sharing any of my own thoughts. I didn't feel like I was utilizing or developing any of my gifts. I was just sort of in the media landscape, and I was grateful for that. But at the time, there were a couple of coworkers of mine who were like, capital W writers in my mind. They used to work at the New Yorker, the New York Times, and now they took this kind of cushy job working for our celebrity founder. And they became kind of like mentors to me. Was that an unkind way to describe them? They really are very talented writers, and that is why I wanted to learn from them. And I remember once one of my colleagues sent me an article by a writer named Taffy Brodesser-Akner, who is now a novelist, but at the time, maybe she still does. She wrote celebrity profiles at the New York Times Magazine. And from the first time I read one of her pieces, it might have been her piece on Gwyneth Paltrow or Bradley Cooper. They're both brilliant pieces if you ever read them. I became obsessed with wanting to be a celebrity profiler. And a celebrity profile, in case you don't know, is basically when a magazine writer, they don't happen so much anymore with social media, so like celebrities want to own their own image. You go and you spend a week or 2 weeks or however much time their publicist will give you, you spend time with a celebrity, and then you walk away and you write a story about them. You give your readers a piece of your experience. You both give some background into the story and the childhood and whatever of the celebrity, but you also find a story. You create a story based on your experience that you think can give some meaning to an audience, meaning and entertainment. And Taffy's profiles to me were so fucking brilliant. I didn't have a subscription or maybe I did have a subscription. I would print out her articles. I would mark them up as if I was in class, trying to see how she achieved, what her hooks were like, the different figurative language she used. I wanted to be a celebrity. I wanted to write celebrity profiles. She did a podcast. One of my favorite podcasts that's no longer creating new episodes was the long form podcast. These 3 journalists would have writers, directors, people, editorial people. They'd have them on the show, and they'd have hour-plus long conversations about the writing craft and their work. And I just used to be obsessed with it as somebody who desperately wanted to be a writer. And they did a live recording once with Taffy in Brooklyn. And I went by myself and I, ate up every word she said. And when the show was over, she was kind of walking around talking to people in the audience because maybe she was signing books. I forget, but I waited, and I finally got the courage to walk up to her after for a while debating if I should or not. And I went up to her and I said, I am such a fan. I want to write celebrity profiles. And if you ever teach a class on celebrity profiles, I will be the first one to sign up for it. I don't know why I said that, but that is what I said. She gave me her email, and she was very kind to me. I actually don't remember what she said, but I remember her being flattered. Months later, I emailed her and she sent me back a great email. Oh my God, you think I can find it? Wait, I wonder if I can find it and read it, because I bet I'd be embarrassed by how I sound. Let's just look really quick. Yep. Okay, the subject line is, "Hi, connecting after long form event." Oh my gosh, I'm going to read this to you. This is going to be really embarrassing. "Hi, Taffy. I hope you're well. I introduced myself to you after your live long-form event and blurted, I'll be the first one to sign up to take your class if you teach one, 3 times within the 45 seconds we spoke. You told me that maybe you teach a class on profile writing in May, and I wanted to see if you still had plans to do so. As I word vomited at long form, I'd really like to take it. Also, if you have 30 minutes one day, I'd love to take you for coffee or a drink." Oh my God, bold of me. "I work at Thrive Global now and mostly write service journalism, but my goal is to write long form. I'm working on a novel now, and in my free time, I often play pretend, assigning myself mini profiles and personal essays as an editor. I think your work is brilliant, and I'd be so grateful for the opportunity to talk with you a bit. Looking forward to hearing what you think. Have a lovely rest of your week. P.S. I pre-ordered Fleischman. That was the name of Fleischman is in Trouble was the name of her first novel, and I cannot wait to read it. Wow, that was a pretty good email. I actually don't sound as desperate as I was worried I was going to sound. That was Monday, March 18th, 2019. Wow. This feels like a full circle fucking moment for me that I wanted to write long form. So funny to see how I was trying to step into who I am now or who I'm becoming now, and I just was trying to figure it out. Okay, and she responded. Wow, she responded in under an hour later. Okay, Alexandra, thank you for pre-ordering my book. That was very nice of you. So I taught a very spur-of-the-moment class this weekend that was made up of people who had written to me more than a year ago asking. I will certainly keep you on the list if I do it again soon. So I'm very grateful for your kind words. I work a lot. I go on trips, have to go into the office a fair amount. And so my policy on meeting with people, even very kind, wonderful seeming ones, is my kids just blanket always get the time I'm not working. I know that's terrible and it means that I lose out on a lot, but it won't always be true because one day they'll want nothing to do with me. And on that day, I hope you're still interested. Why am I crying? I hope that makes sense. In fact, the reason I teach the class in the first place is because of the people who want advice and who I don't make any time for. I just put them all together in one room and charge a bunch of money and hope my kids forgive me. I don't know if I'm doing it right. If I do teach in May, you'll be the first to know, I promise. That's really funny. I do appreciate the honesty of her response. Wow, we're all just trying to figure it out, right? I can't believe I just found that. That's really putting me back in time to a place when I just so desperately wanted to be seen as a writer. I wanted to feel like a writer. I wanted to figure it out. I wanted to be successful, which if you've been listening to the show and anything I talk about when I talk about myself, 6 years later, I still didn't figure it out. I think I've gotten closer to figuring it out than when I started Hello Haze, but I'm still on that fucking journey. Anyway, I wanted to be a celebrity profile writer. That was what I was obsessed with becoming. And now I don't. Now I don't care about that at all. I so clearly see that now as a goal I needed to set in order to find my voice and to find my true purpose and my true identity and my true voice as a writer. But I don't want to write celebrity profiles anymore, not just because celebrity profiles don't really exist, but because I know that that's not right for me anymore. And if I felt that way, if I've had that journey about that goal of mine, that obsession I had, because it really was an obsession, I felt like if I didn't find success doing celebrity profiles or that type of work, and it wasn't even just celebrity profiles, really. It was if I couldn't work at a place like the New York Times or the New Yorker or whatever, if I couldn't be that type of writer, that I wasn't worthy, that I wasn't a writer. That was my mentality. And I don't feel that way anymore. And it gives me so much hope to think that some of the things that I might spiral about now that I really think I want, it gives me so much hope to think that just like my obsession with the celebrity profiles, I'm going to grow out of this too. And the real things I think that I've never grown out of are the goals, are the goals that are more related to the way I want to feel. Not extrinsic goals, but, I want to feel connected to my purpose. I want to feel like I'm making a difference in other people's lives. I want to feel like I am appropriately processing my experiences so that I can move through them and not just have them regularly come back to haunt me every 6 months to a year. I don't know. It gives me a lot of hope to think that I have grown out of an unhealthy obsession before. And anything that is still holding me back, I will grow out of that too. And I just want to toss the question out to you because in reflecting on this, it's just given me a whole lot of hope. So what is something that you used to really want, that you thought you'd be nothing if you didn't get it? What's something that you used to want that you no longer do? What was it? How did you grow out of it? What did it teach you? Please share with me in the comments. I'd love to be in conversation with you about that. I love you guys. This was, I picked the letter that I read last night. I read it earlier. I read it as soon as it arrived and it immediately felt like something I wanted to answer. And then I prepped it last night in my document. And then this morning I was like, is this going to be too emotional for me? Is it going to feel too close to home? And I'm glad I answered it. There's a whole lot there. There's a whole lot there. Anyway, I love you all. Thank you for being here with me. If there are topics you'd like me to cover in this, obviously they require letters coming in, but if there are topics you'd like to cover, of course, write me the letter, hellohayesbusiness@gmail.com, but also just throw them in the comments because then I have like over 10,000 letters from over the years, which is crazy. That's actually fucking crazy. Send them, tell me, well, I lost my train of thought there. Tell me what the topics you're interested in are in the comments, and then I can search to see if I have letters on them. And that's a great way for us to do things. Anyway, if you like this episode, we have new episodes of Hello Haze every Tuesday. Send it to someone you love. Leave a 5-star review, please. If you listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, that's really helpful. Make sure you like it on YouTube. And with that, I love you all, and I will see you next week.